I never thought my own parents would uninvite me from a family retreat they'd been planning for months. But that's exactly what happened. "Sweetheart," my mom said over the phone, her voice dripping with fake warmth, "the cabin only has 3 bedrooms. You understand, right? There just isn't enough space for you this year." Not enough space. Those 3 words burned into my mind, because somehow there was enough space for my brother, his new girlfriend, and even my cousin who practically lived in his car. But not for me. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that follow, like, and share, because trust me, this one gets wild. I hung up the call without saying a word. My chest felt tight, my fingers trembling. It wasn't just a no, it was the way she said it, as if she was doing me a favor, as if I was some stranger trying to crash their perfect little vacation. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the one who helped, stayed out of trouble, and kept everyone's secrets. I had always assumed that one day they'd finally see me for who I really was. But that call, that was the moment I realized they never would. So I decided if there wasn't enough space for me, I'd make some. The next morning I packed my bag anyway. No warning, no message. I just drove up to the mountain cabin they'd rented, 3 hours away. As I climbed the final road, the air turned sharp and cold. I could already see their cars lined up neatly in the gravel driveway. I parked a little down the hill and walked the rest of the way. The crunch of snow under my boots the only sound. Through the cabin windows, I could see them laughing, passing food around. My brother's girlfriend sitting where I used to sit. My jaw clenched. I wasn't jealous. I was done being invisible. I took out my phone, snapped a picture of their cars, and then another of the cabin. And with a small, knowing smile, I sent a message to the one person they'd never expect, someone who could change everything. And when my dad came outside 10 minutes later, confused by the SUV pulling into the driveway behind me, he froze, because stepping out of that car was the man he owed everything to, and hadn't seen in over 15 years. The look on his face said it all. The game had just begun. My dad's face drained of color the moment he saw who stepped out of that car. His hand, the same one that always held authority in our family, trembled as he tried to hide the shock. "Erin," he muttered, his voice cracking. What have you done?" I folded my arms, my expression calm. "Oh, I just invited someone who did have space for me once." The man beside me smiled slightly. He was tall, sharply dressed, his salt and pepper hair trimmed neatly, eyes sharp enough to make anyone uneasy. "Hello, Thomas," he said, his tone polite but edged. "It's been a long time." Dad swallowed hard. "You shouldn't be here, Richard, sure." The name hit the air like thunder. Even my mother, who had just stepped out of the cabin carrying a tray, froze mid-step. The tray slipped from her hands, shattering against the porch. For years I'd heard that name whispered. Richard Lane, the man my father had betrayed in business. The man whose downfall had funded our family's lucky break. And now, he was standing right beside me. "Relax," Richard said, brushing a speck of dust off his coat. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to discuss what's fair, and to return something that was taken from me." Dad's jaw tightened. "And what exactly would that be?" Richard glanced at me and smiled faintly. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "You're lying." "No," Richard said, his tone deadly calm. "I'm telling the truth. Erin isn't yours, Thomas. She's mine." The world tilted. My ears rang. I stared at him, waiting for the joke, the punchline. Anything. But his eyes didn't waver. "What are you talking about?" I stammered. Dad's face collapsed in guilt and panic. "Erin, don't listen to him. He's trying to destroy us again." Richard pulled something from his coat. A folded envelope, old and worn, sealed with a faded wax stamp. "You can decide for yourself. This was written the day you were born." I took it, my hands shaking as I tore it open. Inside was a letter and a photo. My mother, younger, holding a newborn, me. But the man beside her wasn't my father. It was Richard. Tears blurred my vision. "You knew," I whispered. "All these years you knew," my mother's voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. We thought it was better to lie to me?" I snapped, my anger breaking through the shock. "To cut me out of your lives because I wasn't really yours." Richard stepped closer, his voice low but steady. They didn't just cut you out, Erin. They built their entire life off what they took from me, including you. Dad tried to move closer, but Richard's security guard, who had just stepped out of the SUV, blocked his path. I didn't come to fight, Richard continued, eyes still locked on me. I came to make things right. You deserve to know where you came from, and you deserve what's yours. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I looked between my parents, the people who had lied to me my entire life, and the man who claimed to be my real father. For the first time ever, I had the power. I could feel their fear, their shame, and it was only the beginning. I sat in the cabin's living room, numb, staring at the fire. The letter still trembled in my hand. The flames crackled, the only sound in a house that had gone completely silent. No one dared to speak. My mother sat stiffly on the couch, her face pale, her hands gripping her knees like she was holding herself together. My dad stood by the window, pretending to look outside, but I could see the fear in his reflection. And Richard, he sat across from me, calm, composed, studying me like someone seeing a lost piece of his life for the first time. Finally, I broke the silence. So you're saying my entire life was built on a lie? Richard's eyes softened. No, Erin, your life was stolen from you. My chest tightened. Why didn't you ever come for me? He looked into the fire. I tried, but your father had power then. Money, influence, connections. After the business collapsed and your mother left me, I didn't have a chance. By the time I rebuilt myself, you were already grown, and I didn't want to ruin your life again. I laughed bitterly. Guess that plan failed. My dad turned suddenly, his voice rising. Enough of this! Erin, you're my daughter. I raised you. I provided for you. Whatever happened in the past doesn't matter. Doesn't matter? I shot up from the chair, shaking. You lied to me my whole life. You let me think I didn't belong. And when I finally started believing it, you used that to push me away. His face fell. He didn't deny it. Richard leaned forward, his tone colder now. Tell her the truth, Thomas. Tell her where her trust fund went. The one her mother and I set up before she was even born. My mom's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. Richard, stop. But it was too late. Dad's shoulders sagged. It's gone, he said quietly. My heart stopped. Gone? He nodded once, shame flickering in his eyes. We needed the money. After the merger collapsed, everything was falling apart. I couldn't let our family lose everything. Richard's voice dropped to a deadly calm. So you drained her inheritance? Every cent, Mom's voice broke. We did it to protect her. I laughed, tears burning my eyes. Protect me? You left me with nothing while you lived in luxury on stolen money that was mine. I looked between them, the people who'd raised me but never loved me the way I needed. My voice trembled, low and cold. You didn't just take my money. You took my life. Richard stood slowly. Erin, you have two choices now. You can walk away and never look back, or you can let me help you take back everything that's yours, and make them finally face what they did. The firelight flickered across my face as I met his eyes. For the first time, I saw the reflection of someone I barely recognized. Strong, angry, determined. I'll take back what's mine, I said quietly. But I'm not walking away until they feel what I felt. Richard nodded, a faint smile ghosting his lips. Then it begins tonight. The next morning, the mountain air was sharp and cold, and the house felt even colder. No one had slept. Every conversation was either whispered behind doors or cut short when I entered a room. I didn't care. Not anymore. Richard was already waiting for me outside near his car, coffee in hand, dressed like he'd been awake for hours. You ready? He asked. I nodded. Tell me everything. He opened the trunk. Inside were files, neat stacks of documents, folders, and photos. This, he said, is what they didn't want you to see. Your name is on accounts, trusts, and shares your father moved offshore. He's been using your assets to fund his own company for years. I stared at the papers, my stomach tightening. You're saying I've been paying for their life? Richard gave a small nod. Exactly. The house, the cars, the vacations. All of it. I let out a slow, shaky breath. They cut me out of the retreat because they knew you'd show up, didn't they? He smiled faintly. They've been dodging me for months. They didn't expect I'd find you first. The realization hit like a slap. I had been nothing more than a secret to keep quiet. One that could destroy them if the truth came out. So, I said, crossing my arms. What now? Richard leaned against the car. We do this smart. Your father has investors, clients, people who think he's untouchable. We expose the truth publicly, and it'll all collapse. But we'll need proof, and timing. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I can get into his office. He still uses that same laptop everywhere. He won't expect me to look through it. Richard smiled. You really are my daughter. A flicker of warmth passed between us. The first I'd felt in years. By noon, the cabin was alive again, pretending to be normal. My mother fussed over breakfast. My brother complained about Wi-Fi. And my dad tried to act like the world hadn't tilted overnight. But when I walked in, everything stopped. He forced a smile. Erin, why don't you join us for once? I sat down across from him, my face blank. Sure, I said softly. I'd hate to take up too much space. His smile faltered. While they ate, I slipped away to his office. The door wasn't locked, it never was. He still trusted me enough to underestimate me. His laptop sat on the desk, open, screen glowing. I plugged in a small drive Richard had given me and waited as files began to copy. Bank statements, transfers, emails, all of it. And then, something unexpected appeared, a series of messages. To my mother. She's getting suspicious. We can't let her talk to Richard. If she finds out the full story, it's over for both of us. My throat went dry. There was more. Something worse than just money. I copied everything, then pulled the drive out and slipped it into my pocket just as I heard footsteps approaching. My dad stepped into the doorway, his voice low and careful. What are you doing in here, Erin? I turned, forcing a calm smile. Just looking for space. His eyes narrowed. He didn't believe me. But before he could say another word, Richard appeared behind him at the door. Thomas, he said smoothly, you and I need to talk. Alone. Dad's face tightened, and I slipped out past them, my pulse pounding in my ears. Because now I knew this was bigger than stolen money or family lies. There was a secret buried even deeper, one they were both terrified I'd uncover, and I was going to find it. That night, the cabin was silent, but my mind was chaos. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my dad's face when Richard showed up. Fear, not anger. Fear of being caught. I sat near the window, watching snow drift against the glass, clutching the flash drive like it was a lifeline. My phone buzzed. A message from Richard. Don't trust anyone inside the house. Meet me at the lake. Midnight. I slipped on a coat and crept outside, the snow crunching under my boots. The lake shimmered faintly under moonlight, frozen around the edges. Richard stood there, hands in his pockets, face tense. Did you get it? He asked. I nodded and handed him the drive. But there's something else. Messages between them. They're hiding something bigger. He plugged it into his laptop, his breath visible in the cold air. We stood there as files opened one by one. Bank statements, fake company registrations, and then a file labeled Project E. What's Project E? I asked. He hesitated. I've seen this before, he murmured. Your father used the same name years ago, when he took over a real estate deal that wiped out an entire community's savings. He renamed everything under that project. I felt sick. So he's doing it again? Looks like it. Only this time he used your name on the contracts, Richard said quietly. If this leaks before we control it, you'll be the one blamed. Legally, everything points to you. I froze. Wait, he made me the face of his fraud? Richard nodded grimly. That's why they didn't want you here. They were buying time, hiding the paperwork. I stared at the frozen lake, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. My own family had set me up, to protect themselves. Why? I whispered. Richard's voice softened. Because they knew you'd never be cruel enough to fight back. They think you're still the quiet, forgiving daughter who'll walk away. Something inside me snapped. No, I said slowly. Not this time. I turned to him. We're going to take everything back. Every cent, every name, every lie. But we're going to do it the way they won't expect, quietly. Richard smiled faintly. I was hoping you'd say that. The plan began that night. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. My mom chatted about breakfast. My brother complained about the snow. And my dad gave fake smiles that made my stomach twist. But behind every word, every glance, I could feel tension building like a storm about to break. At lunch, Dad said casually, Erin, your name's still on the company documents, right? I looked up slowly. Why? Oh, just checking. You know, in case anyone calls, he said with that fake warmth I used to believe in. I deleted those files last year, I lied. Nothing's under my name anymore. For a second, I saw something flash in his eyes. Panic. And that's when I knew the plan was working. Later that evening, Richard texted me again. We have everything we need. Now we make the move. But I couldn't shake one thought. If my father was desperate enough to frame his own daughter, what else was he hiding? As night fell again, I heard whispers outside my door. My mother's voice, shaking. Thomas, she's starting to suspect. Then we deal with her before she ruins everything. I froze. Deal with me? My hands went cold. I didn't know what that meant. But one thing was clear. My own parents were planning something against me. And this time, if I didn't move first, I might not make it out of this retreat at all. I barely slept. Every creak in the cabin felt like footsteps coming closer. By dawn, I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, going over every word I'd overheard. Deal with her before she ruins everything. That wasn't a threat. It was a plan. When I finally stepped out of my room, my mom was in the kitchen making coffee like nothing had happened. My father sat at the table reading the paper, calm, controlled. My brother scrolled his phone. Morning, sweetheart, Mom said, forcing a smile. Morning, I said flatly. They acted normal. Too normal. It made my skin crawl. I poured my coffee slowly, eyes flicking toward the back door. Richard had told me to meet him again at 10. We were supposed to finish setting up the leak, bank documents, contracts, proof of the fraud. Going somewhere today? Dad asked suddenly, lowering his paper just enough to look at me. I forced a smile. Just for a walk. He nodded, that fake smile returning. Good, you could use some air. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my coat and stepped outside, my heartbeat pounding through my chest. The snow had stopped, but the cold still bit through the air. Richard was already there by the shed, laptop open, gloved hands typing fast. Everything's ready, he said, eyes locked on the screen. The documents will auto-upload at noon. Once they're public, there's no going back. I hesitated. They'll know it's me. They'll know, he said. But they'll never be able to prove it. I cleaned your name from every file. All they'll see is their own signatures. For the first time, I smiled. Not out of joy, out of power, then let's do it. We both turned when we heard the crunch of snow. My mother stood a few yards away, arms folded, eyes sharp. So this is what you've been up to, she said quietly. I told your father you were too stubborn to let things go. Mom, I said, stepping forward, you framed me for Dad's fraud. You left me out of the retreat because you were afraid I'd find out. Her expression flickered, guilt, then fury. You don't understand what's at stake. Everything we have depends on this. Your father worked for decades, lying, stealing, blaming me, I snapped. She flinched, her voice cracking. We did it for you. No, I said coldly. You did it because you thought I'd always stay quiet. Before she could speak, my dad appeared behind her, his voice booming. That's enough. He walked closer, face red, jaw tight. You think you can ruin us? That man you're working with, he's been after me for years. You're just another pawn in his game. Maybe, I said, but I'm not the one who built my empire on lies. Richard stepped forward, holding up a small recording device. Funny thing, Thomas, I already have everything you just said, on tape. My dad froze. For a moment, no one breathed. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees. Then he lunged. I stepped back as Richard blocked him. My mom screamed. The laptop fell into the snow, screen flickering, but not before I saw the last message appear. Upload complete. It was done. Within minutes, every file, every transaction, every hidden deal my parents had tried to bury was now public. My dad stopped, breathing hard, realizing too late what he'd lost. "You'll regret this." "Erin," he hissed. "You just destroyed your family." I met his eyes. "You destroyed it long before I did." And with that, I turned and walked back toward my car. But just before I opened the door, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think it's over? You only exposed half of it." My stomach dropped. Half? I looked back toward the cabin, where my father stood at the doorway, pale and furious. What else were they hiding? The retreat wasn't over yet. I drove for miles, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The snow blurred past, the road twisting through endless pine trees, and all I could think about was that message. "You think it's over? You only exposed half of it." Half. My mind raced through everything I'd seen on the drive. Contracts, transfers, Project E. What else could there be? I pulled over near a gas station, heart pounding. Richard's car pulled in right behind me. He got out, brushing snow from his jacket. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said, holding out my phone. "Look," he read the message, then frowned. "Unknown number?" "Yeah," he looked uneasy. "Then it's someone inside." I froze. "Inside?" He nodded slowly. "Someone close to your family. Someone who knew about the files, but didn't want all of it coming out." Before I could reply, another message came in. "You want the truth? Go back to the cabin basement. Check the locked chest behind the furnace. Don't trust Richard." My breath caught. Don't trust Richard. I turned my eyes toward him. He saw the look on my face and stepped closer. "Erin, don't. You know me. This is what they do. They twist things." "Then how did they know about the chest?" I whispered. He hesitated. "Because your father told me about it years ago, before all this started." My stomach sank. "You knew about Project E before I did?" "I tried to warn you," he said quickly. "You wouldn't have believed me back then." I didn't answer. I just turned and started the car. "I'm going back." "Erin, wait." But I didn't stop. 3 hours later, the cabin came back into view, silent and dark. My family's cars were still there, but no lights showed inside. The place felt heavier, colder. I slipped in through the back door. The air smelled like smoke and pine wood. Every sound echoed too loud. I crept down the stairs into the basement, flashlight shaking in my hand. The furnace hummed low in the corner. Behind it, just like the message said, was an old chest, covered in dust. I pulled it out, the hinges creaking. Inside were stacks of old documents, photos, and, my breath caught, a pile of IDs. Dozens of them, all with different names, all using my father's picture, fake identities. I flipped through them, horror rising. Each ID had been used to move money into different shell companies, the same ones listed under my name. This wasn't just fraud. It was identity theft on a massive scale, and I was the fall guy. I stumbled back, realizing what the message meant. The other half wasn't about money, it was about people. My father hadn't just stolen from investors, he'd stolen from entire families. Footsteps echoed above me. I froze, killing the flashlight. Someone was moving upstairs, slow, deliberate. Then a voice. My father's. "I told you we couldn't let her leave." My blood ran cold. "You said she was gone," my mom hissed. "She came back. She saw too much." My fingers closed around one of the fake IDs. The photo of my father stared back at me, cold, smiling, and perfect. And suddenly I knew what I had to do. I grabbed the chest lid, closed it quietly, and started recording. Every word, every step, every sound. Because if I couldn't escape this time, someone else would need to know the truth. The floorboards above creaked again. "Erin." My mom called softly. I turned off my flashlight. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. They thought they could bury me in their lies. They were about to find out what happens when the quiet daughter finally fights back. The air in the basement felt heavy, thick with dust and fear. Every sound from above made my pulse quicken. I stayed still, hidden behind the furnace, clutching my phone as it recorded. "Thomas," my mother whispered, "what if she really knows everything?" "Then she doesn't leave this house," my father growled. I froze. My chest tightened, breath catching in my throat. They weren't just trying to silence me legally, they were ready to erase me completely. The basement door creaked open. "Erin?" My father's voice echoed down the steps. Calm, deliberate, chilling. "Sweetheart, if you're down there, let's talk." I didn't move. His footsteps grew closer. I watched his shadow stretch down the stairs before he appeared, still in his coat, his face calm, his eyes ice cold. He stopped halfway down. "I know you've been digging," he said quietly. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've stepped into." "Then tell me," I said, stepping out from behind the furnace. My voice was steady. "Tell me why you used my name, why you built everything on lies." He gave a small, bitter smile. "Because you were useful. You were clean. You were naive enough to believe the best in people. That's what made you perfect." My stomach turned. Perfect for what? For him. The voice came from behind me. I spun around. Richard stood there, his face pale, but his eyes different, cold, detached. "Richard?" I whispered. He sighed, stepping closer. "I told you not to trust anyone, Erin. You should have listened." My father smirked. "You really thought he was helping you? He's been my partner since the beginning." My world tilted. No, he warned me. He saved me." Richard's jaw tightened. "I needed you to believe that. You were the perfect key, Erin. The perfect way in." My hands shook. "You used me too?" He looked away. "I didn't want to. But your father made a mistake years ago. He took something from me. I wanted it back. You were the only way to get close again." My father laughed softly. "And now you've both lost." I took a step back, my hand brushing the phone in my pocket, still recording. "So that's it? You both destroy everyone and call it business?" "Business," my father said, "is survival." I raised my voice. "No, it's greed. And I'm done playing by your rules." I tossed the phone toward the furnace. It slid under, still recording, its light blinking red. My father lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You think you can expose me again?" Richard grabbed his shoulder. "Stop! Don't touch me!" My father snarled, shoving him away. But Richard didn't back down. His voice was suddenly sharp, furious. "You ruined everything. You used me, you used her, and now you're going to pay." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. "This holds every secret you ever tried to bury. I was never working for you, Thomas. I was working against you." My father's eyes went wide. But before he could finish, Richard turned to me. "Take it, run, don't look back." He tossed me the flash drive. I caught it just as my father charged. The sound of their struggle echoed through the basement. Grunts, a crash, the shatter of glass. I didn't wait. I sprinted up the stairs, heart pounding, flash drive clutched tight. Behind me, my mother screamed my name, my father shouted, and something heavy hit the floor. I burst through the front door into the freezing night, gasping, snow hitting my face. My car was still there, keys in my pocket. I jumped in, hands trembling as the engine roared to life. In the rearview mirror, I saw the cabin lights flickering. 2 shadows moved violently near the window, and then one fell. I didn't know who it was. I just drove. The snow blurred under my headlights as I drove, faster, faster, trying to leave that cabin and everything inside it behind. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. My father, my mother, Richard. Lies built on lies. The flash drive burned cold in my hand, but it felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. I didn't know if Richard was alive. I didn't know if my father was dead. I didn't even know who had sent that message. All I knew was that everything I'd believed about my family was gone. When I finally stopped at a gas station 2 towns away, dawn was breaking. I parked near the back, locked the doors, and pulled out my laptop. The drive connected instantly. Folders upon folders, neatly labeled, encrypted, dangerous. Inside, decades of corruption. Hidden accounts, fake identities, offshore transfers, and then a folder labeled Erin. I opened it slowly. My heart stopped. Inside were hundreds of documents, leases, bank statements, contracts, all forged under my name. But there was something else. Emails between my parents and Richard. One line stood out. "Keep her close. She's our insurance." I stared at the screen, trembling. Insurance. That's all I was to them. I scrolled further, my eyes burning. There were medical files, mine, showing signatures I'd never seen, authorization forms I never signed. Then one final message from my father to Richard. "If things go wrong, she'll take the fall." I made sure of it. Tears burned behind my eyes. But I didn't cry, not anymore. Because beneath all the files I found something else. Something Richard must have added before giving it to me. A hidden video file. When I opened it, his face appeared on the screen. Blood on his shirt. The same night. "If you're watching this, Erin, then I didn't make it. Your father was never going to stop. I used you, but not how he wanted. You were the only one who could finish this. The authorities won't believe me, but they'll believe you. There's one final file inside this drive. Send it to the email I've marked as Truthgate. It'll reach the right people. End it, for both of us." The video ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frozen screen. He used me. He betrayed me. But in the end, he tried to fix it. I found the file he mentioned. It was a collection of recordings. Every conversation, every transaction, every deal between my father and dozens of other names I didn't recognize. CEOs, lawyers, even politicians. This wasn't just a family secret. It was a network. I uploaded everything to Truthgate. My hands didn't stop shaking until I saw the final message appear. Upload received. "Thank you, Erin," and then silence. I looked out the window. Snow was still falling, soft and endless. The world felt different, colder, but clearer. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Business tycoon Thomas Everett arrested in massive fraud scandal. My father's picture was everywhere. My mother's too. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shaking breath. It was over. Or at least I thought it was. Because then another alert came through. Police discover unidentified body near mountain cabin. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't need to read further. I already knew. Richard. He'd paid the price for my freedom. I put the flash drive away, locked the laptop, and whispered into the quiet morning air. "Thank you." But as I started the car again, I couldn't shake one thought. The message that started it all had come from an unknown number, and now that same number texted again. "He wasn't the only one working with your father." I looked at the screen, heart racing. "Who are you?" I typed. 3 dots appeared. Then the reply came. "Someone who's been watching you for a long time." And just like that, the phone went dark. For days, I kept waiting for it all to feel over. The arrests, the headlines, the endless calls from journalists asking for statements. But inside, there was only silence. The kind that doesn't heal. It haunts. I moved into a small apartment downtown, away from the mountains, away from the memories. I told myself I'd start over. But that message, that number, it wouldn't leave my mind. He wasn't the only one working with your father. Who could it be? Every name that flashed across the news was someone I'd already exposed. Every associate, every fake identity. But one person had stayed hidden. Then, one evening, as the city lights flickered through my window, my phone buzzed again. "Ready to hear the truth, Erin?" I stared at the message. My hands trembled. "Who are you?" I replied. Seconds later, a link appeared. A live video feed. I hesitated, then tapped it. The screen went black. Then a figure appeared, sitting in a dimly lit office. I couldn't see their face, but the voice, I recognized it instantly. "My mother, Erin," she said softly, almost sweetly. "I knew you'd find this." My heart stopped. "Mom?" She smiled faintly. "Thomas was careless. I warned him you'd turn against us, but he never listened. You always had his stubbornness. I could barely speak. You're still free? How?" "Oh, darling," she sighed. "You think I didn't prepare? Everything your father built was my design. He took the blame. I made sure of that." The room around me spun. "You used both of us. Him and me." "I did what I had to do," she said calmly. "You were never supposed to get caught in it, but you were too curious. So I adjusted. My throat went dry. You're the one who sent those messages. Her smile widened. Of course. How else could I make sure you exposed him perfectly? You were the perfect pawn to erase my trail. You did exactly what I needed. I felt sick. You used me to take him down. I gave you your freedom, she said, voice cold and smooth. And now you'll give me mine. There's another drive, Erin, hidden where Richard left it. Bring it to me and I'll disappear forever. Refuse. And I'll make sure the world finds out who really uploaded those files. My stomach twisted. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, she whispered. You think you're clean, but those emails have your fingerprints all over them. I can make you look like the mastermind in minutes. She leaned forward, eyes like steel. So what will it be, sweetheart? Save yourself or take me down with you? The feed ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark screen. My mother had outplayed everyone, even me. But this time, I wasn't that quiet, naive girl anymore. If she wanted a game, I'd give her one. I picked up my phone and opened a new message. You want the drive? Meet me where it all started. I hit send. The same cabin. The same snow. The same silence that had once broken me. Now it would end everything. 3 nights later, she arrived, dressed in black, calm, elegant, like nothing had happened. You kept your word, she said softly. I did, I said, holding up a small silver flash drive. Everything you want. Everything you fear, she smiled. Smart girl. But when she reached for it, I pulled it back. One question first. Did you ever love me? For a moment, her face softened. You were my favorite mistake. And that was all I needed. I dropped the flash drive into the snow and crushed it under my boot. Her smile vanished. What did you do? Ended it, I said. You can run, but I made sure every trace of your voice, every message, every recording is backed up, with the police. Her jaw clenched. You wouldn't dare, I stepped closer. I learned from the best. For the first time, she looked afraid. Sirens echoed in the distance. I watched her glance toward the trees, weighing her escape. But she didn't make it far before the red and blue lights washed through the snow. When they took her away, she didn't look at me. I stood there breathing hard, feeling the cold bite into my skin. For years, my family made me feel small, invisible, replaceable. But standing in that snow, I finally understood. Being underestimated was my greatest weapon, because no one ever saw me coming.